We will make some time for question and answer, and I would ask if you have questions to go to one of the two microphones because the event is being recorded, so we need to hear your questions. We will take, if there are several, we will take several questions and then allow the panelists to react to them. We could start here with this gentleman.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Moses, and I am a second-year law student here at the faculty. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentations. I thought that was amazing. And thank you also for Professor Kotler for coming and all the presenters. So I was wondering, in addition to, well, not in addition to, but other sorts of, in addition to, public disobedience or civil disobedience, what sorts of other mechanisms were used to bring forth the plight of the Venezuelan people? Because I'm thinking in terms of, what other means used, trying to talk to the government, what else is being done to bring about democratization in Venezuela? Because as Professor Kotler mentioned, I knew what was going on in Venezuela, but I had no deep knowledge because of the other sort of like international crisis going on with ISIL, and so what sorts of other means are being used? And also, I want to tell you that I'm also joining in the cause. I think it's a worthy cause. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll take another question on the other side.
First of all, thanks a lot for coming here. We're very grateful for your testimony. So this is more than a Latin American fight or Venezuelan fight. So a Latin American fight, it's also a global fight, of course. And we all know that Chavez and Maduro and their party and other participants of the Sao Paulo Forum have their grip now all over Latin America. Bolivia with Evo Morales, and Peru and Brazil with Lula, and now Dilma. So my question is, would the situation have been different in Venezuela hadn't a major player like Brazil, for example, given support to the regime? And what can we do from abroad, and what can Canada do, what can the United States do, and the international community do to put pressure not only on the regime, but bring awareness also to the problem that's more all-encompassing and more general than just the human rights violations? Thank you.
Thank you. So we're actually going to take those two questions, and then we're going to have to stop there after we've allowed the speakers to respond, because the room was booked until about 3 minutes ago, so there's a limit to the university's patience. So we'll have those two people can ask their questions, and then we'll let the speakers react.
Yes, I'd like to ask two questions that address the causes of this social morass. One of them, first of all, is I'd like to draw parallels to what has emerged in Venezuela and what we've seen over the past couple of months in Peru in particular, because we have the same social destabilization, which really took hold, especially when students' social assistance was taken away. I'd like to know whether you see the situation evolving in the same manner. The second one, more geopolitical, economic in a sense, this question of multiple exchange rates from the 6.5 to the bolivars to the dollars to 150, and I believe there are 4 different ones. They want to compress 2 of them into one. We know the effects on foreign companies is substantial. It drives them away. It forces them to devalue their assets in Venezuela. But I'd like all of you to expound on how these multiple exchange rates are impacting the population in the country, every individual. So if you can expound on that, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And last question to the lady.
Yes. My question is about leadership and the future. You said yourself, Mr. Vecchio, that Leopoldo López now is kind of like the leader of the opposition movement, and there, in the past few years, there has been a lot more focus on him than there used to be focused on Enrique Capriles, who was the one that won the primaries and went against Chavez and Maduro in 2 elections, and garnered an unprecedented amount of votes towards the opposition movement of those people who are disappointed with the government, and it's the same people who were looking at Chavez to be like their only hope when he first ran, the people who had been disappointed with the politics in Venezuela for 40 years previous. And so I wanted to know, like, in your opinion, like, is there a political rationale behind, behind focusing the leadership of the opposition more towards Leopoldo López, or is that just something that kind of happened? Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. So I think maybe we'll go in the order of the presentation. So let's start with Carlos.
You know that when I took this role to go out internationally and try to denounce what is happening in Venezuela, I understood something very clear, very clear. Me as a leader or as a political leader in Venezuela won't change the mind of the Canadian government, for example, or any other government. What I understood clearly is that if you engage the Canadians, people like you, to convince your government in favor of our cause, then you will get a result. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the Prime Minister of Canada won't pay attention to me, but will pay attention to you. And that's what we need to understand and use that to mobilize the community in any particular country in order to move the government of that country. So keeping that in mind, there are thousands of mechanisms that we can use in order to produce that. Professor Kotler just said many of them, and I agree with all of them. And I will add, some ideas. We cannot forget that Venezuela is in this region. It's in America. And we are, in my view, playing the destiny of democracy in the region in Venezuela. And we need to pay attention to that. Canada is part of the UN. So the government of Venezuela doesn't allow to the UN to visit Venezuela in order to verify the violation of human rights. So we need to push Canada to help us in the UN to force that a UN commission could visit Venezuela in order to verify what we are doing, that we are saying outside. We have a resolution which asks for the release of Leopoldo. We need Canada to push that in the UN, to force the Venezuelan government to comply with that resolution. Canada, if I'm right, is part of the Human Rights Commission of the UN. So we need a voice there. Canada is part of the Security Council of the UN, and they can, not yet? Not yet, it's there almost? General Assembly. I thought it was. Okay, but it's almost there. You have, for sure, a partner there. So we could use also that mechanism in order to force the UN to comply or to raise awareness about Venezuela. You were saying that this is only about human rights and democracy. In my view, that's the most important thing. But I must say something. When you have a type of regime as we have in Venezuela, that they don't care anything but their power, just being in power and do whatever they want in order to preserve power, there are a lot of corruption there. And I don't know if you are familiar with this, but recently it was denounced that the second person of the regime has been member of the drug cartel. The majority of the drugs that is produced in Colombia go through Venezuela to the rest of the world. And probably part of the drug problem that you may have here in Canada is because of the drug that is coming from Colombia through Venezuela. So you have an issue there. And also, if you are talking about ISIS, terrorism, well, it was a diplomat of the Venezuela which was involved with the Hezbollah. And one of the members of the official political party in Venezuela brought a lot of people from the Hezbollah to Venezuela. So we have also some things about terrorism. So other elements that we can use, that we can build in order to make our case and to raise awareness in the international community, in this case in Canada. So I believe in that. If you move the community of any particular country, then it's possible to move your government. And that's what we need from you to do. And also, something that in my view is very important, is some of you could go to Venezuela by yourself on an important representation of the government, or if Mr. Cutler could go to Venezuela to visit Leopoldo.
Try to visit Leopoldo.
Try to visit Leopoldo. That will help tremendously in our cause. Recently, we had the visit of three former Latin American presidents. Last year, I went to the Club de Madrid, which is an organization which groups a lot of close to 100 former presidents around the world. And they made a joint declaration in favor of Leopoldo. So that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do. I will end just there. I wanted to talk about the exchange regime, so privately we can just discuss it. Sorry.
I'm not an expert on economics, but since one of the questions is about the control exchange rate, and since I'm a Venezuelan and I'm also a victim because we're also victims of the economic problems, not just of human rights problems, but also of that problem, I would say that the Chavista model has failed. The Chavista model includes control of the currency exchange, control of the production, control of distribution, control of the ideology, control of they don't want any other political parties but the PCUV. So control of the society. That's the Chavista model, and it has failed. That's why we have an economic crisis, a social crisis, and a political crisis. So the government either has to change radically, which they haven't given any signs of wanting to change, or we have to change the government. Those are the two ways to improve the lives of all Venezuelans. One person also asked about what other ways do they exist other than going to protest in the streets. Well, through 15 years of having this regime, Venezuelans have tried many ways. Political parties have tried to have dialogue, and the government is not willing to have dialogue. The powers, there's no separation of powers, as Carlos explained before. So, for example, the Attorney General has been there for how many years, and she's very close to the political party. And the same in all other important positions in the government. So it is a model that has just gone in an implosion. It's time for change.